In this video demonstration, we show how to configure ViPR for object storage. The ViPR Object Data Services virtual machine provides the ability of storing object on file system. The file system can be a file system that is managed by ViPR or an external file system. For the purpose of this demo, we'll use a file system managed by ViPR. So let's log in to ViPR, navigate to admin, and validate that we have a virtual pool for file that it can be used for object. As we can see, we have two pools. One is block, the other is file. So we use the file virtual pool. If I click on the virtual pool, I see that there is a VNX file as the storage pool that is associated with this virtual pool for abstraction. So if I go back to virtual assets, I'm going to use the Boston virtual array as well. So if I go to networks, I see that I have a Boston IP network that has all my hosts as well as my VNX file as part of that network. So we go to data services. We make sure that the network configuration is assigned for the Boston IP network, because ViPR will use this network configuration to talk to the file storage array when creating the file system and the shares that are used for object. We go into virtual pools and we need to create a virtual pool. The virtual pools for object, they basically what they do, they group together different data stores. So we need to have one virtual pool or multiple virtual pools that are used for grouping data stores. So let's create the first virtual pool here. It's going to call pod 6 object virtual pool. You can give it a description. Virtual pool for object data stores. Click save. Next, we go to data stores. Data stores are file systems and shares that a ViPR will create to support storing object on file. So we're going to click add, and we're going to create a pod 6 data store. This is going to be the data store for object on file. We're going to select the high capacity file pool. This is the virtual pool that we have the VNX. So we're going to select that one, and I'm going to create a 2 gigabyte on size data store, and we're going to use the virtual pool that we just created and click save. So what is ViPR is doing now, it's connecting to the VNX and creating the file system and the file share that will be used as the file system to store objects. So if I connect to my VNX, I can go into storage, file systems, and I see that ViPR just created this pod 6 data store with the size of 2 gigabytes. So if I right click and go into properties, I see that this is a new file system of the size of 2 gigabyte. So if I go back to ViPR, I see that ViPR created that data store. I could create more data stores and we'll create different file systems. In this case, we use just one data store for the purpose of the demo. So the next step is to go into tenant configuration. We created a tenant namespace. We assign the virtual pool that this tenant will be able to use and the project that is associated with this tenant, and click save. Next, we go to base URLs. Base URLs, they are optional, but basically what they do, they facilitate the integration with existing applications. For example, Amazon S3. So if the customer has an application that was written for Amazon S3 API, ViPR will integrate with the environment, and you can use the same application and point that application to ViPR. And that's what we're going to do for this demo. We're going to use a plugin called S3 Organizer, and we're going to point that plugin to ViPR, and we're going to be able to store and retrieve data from the ViPR object data storage. So we click add, and we call this Amazon S3 base URL, and I know that the URL is s3.amazonaws.com, and I click Save. The final step of the basic implementation for ViPR for object storage is that we have a user, in our case is root, and we need to create a object store key for this user. I could create another use for like the application owner that is going to be accessing this object store. In our case, we're going to use root. So I click add. So ViPR creates the store key for the root user. So now to validate that I can actually store and retrieve data out of this ViPR object storage instance, I can open my Firefox. And as I mentioned before, I have S3 Organizer. So the S3 Organizer is an add-on of the Firefox browser. So I need to go to the browser, click Options, and set up proxy. So every communication in this browser points to the ViPR Object Data Service virtual machine. So I enter the IP address of the virtual machine, the ViPR Object Data Service virtual machine, in this case 110. If I had a multiple virtual machines supporting the ViPR Object Data Service, I would point to the load balancer that is provided by the customer. In our case, we have just one, so I enter the IP address, the port, and I click OK. So the next step is to go into Manage Account. I have an account called ViPR. So ViPR. The access key is the user that has permissions to store and retrieve data out of ViPR. And the secret key is the secret key that we created, the object store key that we created for root. So I'm going to copy this and paste here. And I click Add and close. Now we should be connected to ViPR. So the one way that I can validate that I'm able to store and retrieve data is the first thing is to create a bucket. A bucket in the object world is the same as a directory in a file system. So I'm going to call this test. So I was able to create the test directory inside ViPR as an object. So another test that we can do is I can go into my desktop here. I have a folder called images. So I have a list of different images and some files. So I'm going to copy these four files to the ViPR object storage. So I select all four and I do upload. So as you can see now, ViPR, this S3 Organize is uploading those four files to the ViPR object storage. So I see the first file is about 67 megabyte. The second file is about the same size, and then we have two small images. So as you can see, I was able to store the data. One way to validate that, I can go back to my Unisphere. I can close this, and I can refresh and right click on my file system that was created by ViPR. And as you can see now, instead of 33 megabytes, I have roughly 163 megabytes being stored inside this file system. So those are the four images or the four files that we copied as object that is being stored inside the file system that was created by ViPR. And to finalize this demo, I want to see if I can actually retrieve that data. So I select the four of them. I go back. I created a directory called, let's say, download in my local machine, and I'm going to try to download those four files. So if you look here on the status, you can see that the four files are being downloaded. So 3 of them done, and it's processing the image2.exe. So if I refresh here, I see that I have all the four files copied to my machine. One more thing is that if I go back to ViPR admin tab and I go to system health, I should be able to see how much object storage is being used. So as you can see, it's reporting that we are using 2 gigabytes. So this concludes this video demonstration. Thank you.